I call this meeting to order. Good day, everyone. Welcome to meeting number 70 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people.
La réunion de
Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order adopted on June 23rd, 2022.
Now, there are some quick housekeeping rules that we wanted to talk about. While public health authorities and the Board of Internal Economy no longer mandates or requires wearing a mask indoors or on the precinct, masks and respirators are still excellent tools to prevent the spread of any kind of disease. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, September the 20th, 2022, the committee is meeting to continue its study on safe sport in Canada. Today, we have three witnesses representing the Canadian Soccer Association. Earl Cochrane, Secretary General, Canadian Soccer, by video conference. Paul-Claude Berube, Independent Director, Board of Directors, Canada Soccer, by video conference. And Stephanie Geosis, Directrice Indépendante, Conseil d'Administration, Canada Soccer. Now, so here's how we do this. First and foremost, you're not allowed to take any pictures of yourselves at the meeting. No photos are allowed. Secondly, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see that there is a little globe, and that globe, if you press it, will give you English or French translation. And of course, basically, that's about it. Anything you say should be through the chair. And so we can begin. And before we begin, we will be giving the three witnesses a total of 10 minutes. Not each, but a total of 10 minutes. And I also wanted to remind the committee that we have a hard stop because we have 15 minutes of business at the end of this meeting. So,
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, Kevin?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to get confirmation. We asked for the outgoing president of Canadian Soccer, Nick Bontis, to appear. We also asked for Mr. Cochrane, but we did not ask for the two independent directors. I would just like to know through the clerk how they became involved in today's meeting. And I just going to throw this out. When Mr. Bontis, because Wednesday we got the notice he was coming, so when we received notice that he was not coming, I wondered if we should have canceled this meeting with Canadian Soccer. Everybody around this table, Madam Chair, wanted Mr. Bontis, and he's not here today. But we also wanted Mr. Cochrane. Thank you for showing up. But we did not want the independent directors. We did not. So I'm just going to ask for the clerk, if you don't mind, to how did we get here today with two people that the board around here, the committee, did not actually call on as witnesses?
Clerk, perhaps you can respond.
Sure. Yeah, the motion that the committee adopted was to invite, the president and CEO of Soccer Canada. Typically, when we invite any organization, we leave it up to the organization to decide which representatives it will send to the committee to testify. I believe that there was no restriction on other witnesses being, included, but it's when we issue an invitation like that, it's not exclusive just to the person in the invitation. We leave it up to the organization. If the committee has an issue with these witnesses testifying, the committee could decide to excuse them.
And if I may add, Clerk, we received a letter from Mr. Bontis telling us that due to certain circumstances which required an empathetic decision, he could not come to this particular meeting.
Madam Chair, if I can, will Mr. Bontas be rescheduled then? This committee desperately wants to hear from the former president of Canadian Soccer. And yes, you have alluded to a letter, but at the same time, when would Mr. Bontas come to committee and testify?
I will ask the clerk to answer that question because he has been in touch with Mr. Bontas, and I agreed that the letter warranted us listening to his call for some sympathetic, humanitarian, compassionate grounds for him not to come to this particular meeting. Mike?
Yeah, I have no new information other than the missive that we received from Dr. Bontas' lawyer indicating that he would not be present today. So I have no new information on when he may be available. Also, Madam Chair, Monsieur Lemire veut partager quelque chose?
Yes, Monsieur Sébastien?
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, I'd like to propose that we can make sure to re-invite that witness, Mr. Bontas. I would like for the CFO of Soccer Canada to also appear. Of course, today's meetings can help us determine the urgency of holding that other meeting, but I do think we will need to hold another meeting to make sure that those two witnesses from Soccer Canada can testify and answer our questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lemire. Is there anyone on the committee who objects to this, or do we agree with Mr. Lemire's suggestion?
Mr. Julian has his hand up.
Peter?
Yes, I would like to move that we summon Mr. Bontas to a meeting to be held in the month of March by this committee.
Anyone objecting to that actual motion by Peter?
Can I have no objection, but I believe he was summoned already, and I believe the original thing was not just an invitation. I believe he was summoned in the event he didn't accept the invitation. But I would suggest, since we're dealing with this now, we also summon Victor Montegliani as well, because it is very evident from the previous meeting that he is needed and was very involved in the CSB agreement as well. So if maybe Peter would adjust his motion accordingly, I'd be delighted to support the three of them coming.
Thank you. So it sounds as if we've got an amendment to Mr. Julian's motion. Does anyone disagree with the amendment that Mr. Housefather placed? No disagreement.
Madam Chair, just to make sure that Mr. Hurstman, the CFO of Soccer Canada, also be included. So a second amendment, please.
All right. So then any objection to Mr. Lemire's second amendment of names? Not hearing anybody, I think we have
Madam Chair,
the names.
I just, so the motion is for the end of March, meaning that we would need these people in to committee either this Thursday, next Monday, or next Thursday.
Yes, so obviously, yes.
Yep, good.
I think that was suggested before the break.
Yep, thank you.
Now, given that we now have an amended motion, does anyone object to the amended motion brought forward by
Mr. Julian has his hand up.
Peter?
No objection, Madam Chair. I appreciate the amendments by my two colleagues, Mr. Housefather and Monsieur Lemire. When we originally summoned Mr. Bontas, it was with his position, not with his name. And now that he has resigned his position, I think it's important that we issue this summons in his name. That way, we are crystal clear that we expect him to come to committee.
Thank you. So shall we then move on now to listen to the witnesses? Beginning with, again, for 10 minutes. And I don't know, I think, Mr. Cochrane, are you going to be the spokesperson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think all three of us will have a part to play in the 10 minutes.
All right, so you may begin. I'm setting the stopwatch. I will give you a 30-second cue so that you can wrap up whatever you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, and hello to you and members of the committee. I'm Stephanie Gaositz, a member of the Canada Soccer Board of Directors.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Good day, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Paul-Claude Bérubé, member of Canada Soccer Board of Directors. In the past, I was involved for many years with Soccer Quebec. Thank you very much.
Canada Soccer is the governing body for the sport in our country and is made up of our provincial associations and professional league members. Canada Soccer is also charged with coaching and referee development. The other board members and I are volunteers from across the country who collaborate with partners and staff to grow soccer in Canada from the grassroots level up and strive to ensure that soccer is the safest sport in our country. All of the national teams, including the players and technical staff of the senior men's and women's national teams, are part of Canada Soccer, not separate entities. The senior national teams are the backbone of the association, and the women's team has been crucial in our growth, inspiring Canadians with their skills for decades. Equality in sport for people of all gender identities is imperative and subject to an increasingly global conversation. Canada Soccer must always be a force for progress in that conversation. On equal pay, we feel we are doing that. In other ways, we have fallen short at times, and we commit to doing better. We hear the concerns of the women's national team players, and we are committed to addressing those concerns and consistently improving their experiences in the national program.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Earl Cochrane. I'm the General Secretary of Canada Soccer. Canada Soccer governs the global sport in our country. We are custodians of a sport that perhaps more than any other has a platform to transform society for the better. It is incumbent upon Canada Soccer to amplify Canadian values and to weave them into the fabric of our game, both domestically and internationally. We haven't always been perfect, but our intent is to have a significant positive impact on those that play and enjoy our sport. In recent years, compensation for the Canada Soccer national teams have grown exponentially, but payment to the two teams has always been similar. From 2012 to 2019, player compensation was $2.92 million for the men and $2.96 million for the women. As the national teams have grown and have enjoyed success, they have been paid as such. When payment to each national team has been unequal in any given year, it has generally been driven by differences in competition calendars. In 2020, COVID-19 led to the inactivity of both teams and obviously had a negative impact on their compensation. But even so, that year, the women's national team was paid the amount contractually owed to them, while the men's team received no pay. However, the compensation for the teams has never been the same, and Canada Soccer understands and fully supports the women's team's desire for equal pay. Canada Soccer is committed to delivering equal pay and ensuring the environments for both of our national teams are built for success. Based on those principles, in June 2022, Canada Soccer first offered a framework for the same collectively bargained agreements to the players of both national teams. The proposed agreements will pay players on both teams the same amount for playing a 90-minute match and will share total competition prize money equally between the teams. Simply put, national team players, regardless of their gender identity, will be paid the same amount for their work in representing our country. Canada Soccer has negotiated in good faith and will continue to do so. We have provided documentation to inform those negotiations. In fact, we have a financial information session with the teams in a few hours. We have provided the national team players and their representatives detailed information and briefings on Canada Soccer's financials, its audited financial statements, and detailed breakdowns of Canada Soccer spending. The leadership team of the women's national team and their legal counsel were also given a presentation on Canada Soccer Canadian Soccer Business Agreement. The players and their representatives have always been welcome to ask any questions about that information. Canada Soccer has also met and will continue to meet all legal requirements for financial disclosure. We know the government is considering new requirements for national sport organizations, and we welcome direction on that from the Minister of Sport. We firmly believe the offer in front of the national teams today is fair and equitable. The agreement would make Canada's women's team the second highest paid women's national team amongst the 211 FIFA member associations, trailing only the United States. The men's team will also be fairly compensated and in line with other World Cup caliber nations, but this requires sign-off by all three parties. We are doing this despite the fact that Canada Soccer's revenues are significantly less than those of most of our competitors. In 2021, Canada Soccer's total revenue was approximately $33 million. In that same year, the football associations of the women's teams, currently ranked higher than Canada by FIFA, the US, Germany, England, Sweden, and France, had total revenues ranging from $70 million to $700 million. And we are paying Canada's women more than those associations, with the exception of the US. Also, Canada Soccer is working to deliver equal pay in an extremely unequal international environment. For example, Canada Soccer will receive $9 million for appearing in the group stage of the 22 Men's World Cup, while the association would receive a similar amount for winning the 23 Women's World Cup. Canada Soccer is offering to equalize this disparity for the women's team because they deserve it. They are world-class athletes and global ambassadors for our country. Canada Soccer commits to being a part of the solution of our unequal financial environment in which we operate. Canada Soccer is also dedicated to equity in our national team operations. Equal opportunity has been and will continue to be our standard practice. From 2012 to 2019, total staffing and program spending was just about $37 million for both national teams. Recently, Canada Soccer made some funding decisions for the operations of the women's team that it thought would have minimal impact. We were wrong. Those decisions were made with good intentions of controlling spending, but we should not have made those decisions that negatively impacted the women's team. Canada Soccer is now in conversations with the technical staff of our women's team to reconfirm what they need to be successful at the World Cup, and we are committed to meeting those needs. Canada Soccer also recommitted privately to the women's team players and is publicly reiterating that today, that we will continue to deliver the resources needed to compete and succeed at the international level. That includes, but is not limited to, preparatory matches against top-tier opponents, adequate staffing, minimum number of players, adherence to an agreed-to travel policy, and equitable training venues and accommodations. But it will not necessarily mean equal amounts spent on the operations of the national teams at all times, because the teams have very different competitive calendars and requirements within the FIFA match windows. Delivering on those commitments will require additional revenue, so Canada Soccer is developing a 5-year revenue-focused strategic plan and holding discussions to amend our agreement with CSB. The CSB agreement provides valuable broadcast and streaming opportunities for both national teams. It guarantees Canada Soccer an annual payment, and it has secured new partners to significantly invest in grassroots and high-performance soccer in Canada. Prior to the CSB agreement, Canada Soccer was paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to broadcast women's and men's national team games. No Canadian broadcaster was willing to pay to broadcast those games. The CSB agreement has resolved that issue and has helped grow the women's game in Canada. The governing body for European football, the Scottish FA, and Major League Soccer and Soccer United Marketing have or have had similar agreements. Today, the unilateral term option and limited ability for us to share in upside revenue are drawbacks of the agreement with CSB, but we hope to resolve those issues shortly. In recent years, Canada Soccer's national teams have achieved an unprecedented level of success. The women's team's 2021 Olympic gold medal was a particularly special moment, and the women's team have consistently demonstrated excellence. Canada Soccer is proud of those achievements and will fully support the women's team to succeed at the 2023 Women's World Cup and to qualify for Paris 2024 in September, and to continue to compete for titles. We are listening and responding to what the players and technical staff need. We are committed to equal pay through the proposed collective bargaining agreements, and we must deliver on our commitments within set budgets and financial realities. I'm going to go off script, so my apologies, Madam Chair, for one moment. A few weeks ago, Janine Becky, a player on the women's national team, appeared before you. She recently suffered an injury that will see her miss the World Cup and miss the remainder of her 2023 NWSL season with her full-time professional club. On behalf of Canada Soccer, and if it's not too presumptuous, on behalf of this committee, I would like to let her know that she's in our thoughts and we wish her the best on her recovery. I've gotten to know Janine over the past year quite well, and on top of being incredibly professional and passionate about this sport and this country, she's a warrior, and I know that she will come back stronger than ever. And I wanted to share publicly that we will, through the team and through our full-time staff, do everything that we can to provide every opportunity for her to be involved in any way that she sees fit at the World Cup. Thank you for your attention.
Madam Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you. I want to echo your concern and hope that Janine would be able to be back on her feet at some time soon and be playing in the game that she loves so much. However, we're going to move now to the question and answer segment. And that segment is going to be starting with a 6-minute segment. You will get questions from the committee, and the 6 minutes includes question and answer. So if everyone could be as concise as possible in their answers and their questions. Now, we will begin with the Conservatives for 6 minutes. Mr. Waugh, Kevin Waugh. Kevin, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, wish the best for Janine. She was here less than 2 weeks ago, and it was a devastating injury that she suffered in Portland. So our thoughts are with her as she is on the rebound. Mr. Cochrane, thank you for your comments. I'm a little disappointed we are not seeing the former president, Mr. Bontas, but what reason did Mr. Bontas give you and others around the board for his departure?
Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question. The reasons for Mr. Bontas's departure and what was shared with the board was based off of a letter sent from the member associations seeking his resignation.
And for the provincial associations to do that, what was their issue with the leadership of your organization? Obviously, it got to a toxic location for the provincial authorities to write this letter to see Mr. Bontas step down. What can you fill us in on?
Thank you again for the question, Madam Chair. The letter didn't describe in detail the reasonings. We had reached out to the member associations to see if we could get on a call to have a further discussion, and they did not want to have that call. And so Mr. Bontas decided that it was in the best interest for the association if he would accept what they were asking and make his resignation known.
Well, did anyone reach out to the provincial associations from Canada Soccer to deal with their issues, which, according to you, you don't know what their issue was? They just wrote the letter, Bontas left, and let's leave it at that. There has to be a little more involved here.
Madam Chair, the message that we did receive from the member associations was that, for all intents and purposes, it was what would equate to a non-confidence vote. But I'll also turn it over to my colleagues if they have anything further to add, who are actually on the board and may have had some conversations with some of the member associations.
Madam Chair, if I may, the member associations were coming out of a meeting in Ottawa where they gathered and identified some issues that they would like addressed through better stakeholder relations with them and ensuring that their feedback and that their input was included going forward. And we, as a board, know that we need to do better in terms of our broader stakeholder relations. So that was the discussion around the board table, and with our interim president and vice president in place, that is a key focus for us based on the member association's feedback and also feedback from the teams, that we need to do better in communicating with our stakeholders.
So like Hockey Canada, do the grassroots teams in each provincial province and territories, do they give a registration fee to Canada Soccer? And if so, where does that money go? Mr. Cochrane.
Madam Chair, yes, the member associations do provide us with a membership fee. That membership fee is $9 per player across the country, and that fee and that structure goes into the general revenue of the association to help support the development of both of our national teams. But in addition to that, the significant influence that we have on coaching development, referee development, player development, and all of the things that we are responsible for as a governing body.
Yes, we heard that from the 4 women who represent the national team that were here 2 weeks ago. It's not only about salary, and it's about surrounding accommodations, it's about extra players, it's about a number of things. I kind of laughed when you said you're looking forward to pay equity, and then you release a news release about an hour ahead of our meeting with the 4 women team. They're upset. The men are upset. The men tried, in fact, to boycott the game in Vancouver last year. The women nearly walked off the field in the United States. You got a big problem here. The problem is they want to follow the money. Who agreed to the deal with the Canadian soccer business? Let's start there. Who, Mr. Cochrane, agreed to this deal in secrecy with the Canadian soccer business?
Madam Chair.
Please answer, yes. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, again, thank you for the question. There's a couple of questions there. I think I'll answer the latter first. The decision to agree to a contract and a representation agreement with Canada Soccer Business was a decision that was ultimately made by the board of directors. Perhaps it would be best answered by one of the board of directors that was here. I was not here. I was not party to that contract, and I was not negotiating that contract. So I will turn it over to Monsieur Placote to answer.
We have 1 minute left.
Oui. Alors, je vais répondre à la question.
Very well. Let me put this very precisely, if I may, Madam Chair. Yes, indeed. Discussions about the agreement with Canadian soccer business began in 2017. On the board of directors in March, we agreed to go ahead with the Memorandum of Understanding. And then at the end of 2017, we carried out our due diligence. And during 2018, more particularly in March of 2018, we received a Memorandum of Understanding, and we agreed to a few changes. And the agreement was signed on the 1st of January 2019, if memory serves me well. So it wasn't secret. This was a matter being openly discussed among members of the board of directors, and all members received all the information they needed to make decisions as we went ahead, working out the agreement, discussing it.
Left.
Mr. Berube, I am very sorry, but we have gone over time now, and maybe when you get another question later on, you might want to expand on this answer that you're giving us. Thank you very much. I now go to the Liberals, to Mr. Housefather Anthony. 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and of course also my best wishes to Jadine, who was a very impressive witness before us a few weeks ago. I'm going to come back to Mr. Waugh's line of questioning then. Both of you have testified, and you're both under oath, as you know, that the board of directors approved the agreement with Canada Soccer Business, and one of the issues that we are here for relates to the lack of transparency around this representation agreement. So I will ask you, At your board meeting of November 30th, 2018, Motion 37 was adopted. It states, motion, the CSA CPL negotiating team to meet with representatives of CSB no later than December 14th, 2018, with all non-substantive issues resolved and with the intent of negotiating a final agreement by December 14th, 2018, and that the CSA negotiating team report back to the board at a conference call no later than December 16th, 2018, to recommend either approval of the negotiated agreement or to decide on the next steps. Moved by Bernie Morden, seconded by Ryan Fiquette. The next meeting minutes provided to us were March 23rd, 2019, and there was no signal that the board ever approved this agreement. I have no board minutes where the board approved this agreement. So, Mr. Cochrane, on what date did the board of directors approve the agreement? Where can you refer to me that in the minutes, please?
All right, to that question, I can say as follows. If my memory serves me well, the agreement was agreed on with its changes the 27th of March, 2018. Motion number 55. Mr. Biribe, I will interrupt you. I have just read exactly what was carried from the minutes of November 30th, 2018, and that was after March 2018. In November, the 30th of November 2018, there was a motion that was carried stating clearly that the Board of Directors had not accepted the agreement as it was. And I read it again.
The negotiating team is to report back to the board at a conference call no later than December 16, 2018, to recommend either approval of the negotiated agreement or to decide on the next steps. There was then never, as I see it, because all the board meetings were supposed to be provided to the committee, any subsequent board meeting that showed that this agreement, this very immaterial agreement in its final version, was ever approved by the board of directors. Can you please clarify at what date, after November 30th, 2018, motion M37, did the Board of Directors of Canada Soccer approve this very material representation agreement? Mr. Cochrane, this question is to you, Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you for the question. I wasn't involved in any of the board discussions, nor was I at the time the General Secretary, CEO of Canada
Soccer. You were the witness summoned to represent Canada Soccer. You should have taken material notice of this very important question that everybody knew was going to be brought up today at the committee. You have a board member, a former board member named Ryan Fiquette, who is quoted as saying, the board recognized this was a expletive deal from the start. You should know about an organization you are partnering with if you are giving them literally all your marketing rights. And every time we have asked for information about Canada Soccer business, the board has been shut down. The board absolutely did not approve this contract. You have other former board members that say the same, and I went through all of your minutes, and you have no minutes. Yes, it is true, in March 2018, there was a document that had some type of approval, but that was not a final version. In November 30th, 2018, the board reconsidered that document and said it wanted to come back to it, to have the negotiating team report back to recommend either approval of our next steps. The agreement was signed on December 1st, 2019. It does not look like your board ever approved this agreement, which would be a considerable material problem, as this is a very, very important document that would have needed to be approved by the board. So, Mr. Cochrane, what in your research did you find in terms of at what date the board approved this document?
Madam Chair, again, I appreciate the question, but my understanding was on that date, on March 27th, 2018, was when the Board of Directors approved the representation.
Okay, so I've read from you, Mr. Cochrane, I have read from you from the minutes of November 30th, 2018. November 30th, 2018 is later than March 2018, right?
Correct.
Correct. On that date, the board said that all non-substantive issues should be resolved by December 14th and that the negotiating team should report back to the board at a conference call no later than December 16th, 2018 to recommend either approval of the negotiated agreement, so clearly the board did not consider it approved, or to decide on next steps. Did that meeting ever happen? Because we don't have minutes of it.
Madam Chair, I'm unaware of the board structure or the board meeting minutes, as I was not involved on the board at that time. I can certainly go back through the minutes that we've provided and try to find if that information exists. But my understanding, again, was on March 27th, 2018.
Okay, but you're repeating that. You're saying that, but I've proven to you that you have minutes from later that year where the board clearly had not approved the agreement because it said it wanted the negotiating team to come back to recommend either approval or decide on next steps. So clearly, on November 30th, 2018, the board felt it had not approved the document. And Madam Chair, you're on mute. Am I out of time?
Somebody keeps muting me. So I just wanted to say that you have 30 seconds, Anthony. That's all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so in my next round of questioning, since you in your opening comments, Mr. Cochrane, made substantive comments about the agreement, even though you've asked us not to discuss it and you said you wanted to do so in camera, I will reserve my time for the next round of questions that I do, and I will be asking you substantive questions about this agreement since you opened the door in your opening statements. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Housefather. And I now go to the Bloc Québécois for Sébastien Lemire.
The Bloc Québécois, Mr. Lemire, 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. D'abord,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, want to tell Janet Becky that we're stand with her and we hope she gets well quickly. My question is for you, and I will continue picking up on what Mr. Housefather was discussing. Who advised that you come to an agreement with Canadian soccer business? I'm not sure if the question is specifically about one to either of us, but I can certainly try to answer. First, let's remember what the context was in 2017. We needed income. We were spending hand over fist to broadcast our men and women team matches, about $1 million a year just to broadcast them. We needed income to ensure that we could continue developing soccer across Canada. And this was one of the approaches that was approved of by the Board of Directors, this agreement that would allow us to create a Canadian league, a Canadian Soccer League, a national league, and also to be able to raise our income. This was discussed in Board of Director meetings and with management, and we also discussed this with our legal team to get their advice on the documents we had shared with them. I wish to tell you that the agreement was indeed adopted, approved of on the 27th of March 2018. I have before me the motion that was carried at that time that says clearly,
agreement has circulated with amendments. Alors, ça a été fait le 27 mars 2018.
So this was done on the 27th of March 2018. We did request changes, and the discussions continued until December, when a phone conversation occurred. All members of the Board of Directors said that they approved of the agreement and approved of signing it, which was done on the 1st of January 2019. So you say that no member of the Board of Directors objected to the agreement? No, there were no objections at all to the agreement. And this motion was carried by all members. It was unanimous. What might have been said thereafter, of course, by individual members, well, that's their business. But I can tell you what I saw. I was there. I was present in all the Board of Directors meetings, and I can tell you clearly that the agreement was supported by all. For a very good reason, it allowed us to receive $4 million, actually $3 million in income a year and avoid spending $1 million a year for broadcasting our matches. We needed that sum, that amount at the time, and we agreed to go ahead for long-term funding so that our operations would be secure to the benefit of all our athletes and to the benefit of the sport that we were promoting. So why didn't Stephen Reid sign it? Where is if Stephen was approved, it was approved for signature. Why isn't that stated? Mr. Reid was chair of the board of directors, after we would agree to this, then he would be able to sign for our organization. We didn't have to agree to that again, to agree to nominate him to sign. You were supposed to receive reports from the Canadian soccer business. Did you receive these reports, and did you look them over at the board level? I will ask Mr. Cochrane to answer the question because it's a matter of management, operations, and he receives the reports. Mr. Cochrane, then.
Chair, we do have regular dialogue with Canada Soccer Business. We do receive reports from them. And a part of the ongoing discussions as we look to modernize the agreement, we will continue to have those moments where they report and report via us the details of their business.
Les États-Unis ont mis fin à leur...
The United States brought their agreement to an end. It was sort of a model for you because it was a bad agreement, according to them. So did you intend to do something to put an end to the agreement, given that conditions changed? We have the impression that Canadian soccer business, none of the participating groups are in Canada, by the way, had a bad funding approach. I'm not sure who the question is for, but it will be a pleasure to try to answer. Quite the opposite. The agreement we have with Canadian soccer business, Canada Soccer Business, allows us to fund a number of programs across Canada to grow soccer, including women's and men's national teams. I mentioned the $4 million a year, which is definitely good income for us. If we didn't have this amount, it would be impossible to pay our players, both men and women, as well as we do now. So the agreement, of course, when it was signed, was very beneficial. And now, of course, it would be a good idea to look over it, to update it, and that was already underway before anything came before Parliament.
Mettre fin à cette...
So would it be possible to bring the agreement to an end? Well, of course, agreements are signed by partners, and all partners must find the agreement beneficial for them. And should that no longer be the case, if the agreement would no longer be useful to us on a long-term basis, we could certainly undertake to bring it to an end, but that's not what we're aiming for. Our aim is to renegotiate.
I'm sorry, your time is up, Sébastien. I'm going to now the New Democratic Party for Peter Julian. 6 minutes, Peter.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Les Canadiennes et les Canadiens ont le droit à la transparence. Et la réalité, c'est que...
Thank you, Madam Chair. Canadians deserve transparency, and the truth is that players across the country are continuing to work under this structure, which looks like it's not transparent.
The reality is, as we are asking these questions, we're finding that Canada Soccer is not providing the appropriate responses. And I would suggest that it is in the interests of soccer players across the country, our national women's teams, our national men's teams, that we're very proud of, that Canada Soccer start giving responses. My first question is related to financial statements filing. Corporations Canada requires that Canada Soccer file their financial statements every year. It was reported on February 11th that Canada Soccer is now in non-compliance for 7 years in a row. Has this been discussed at the Board of Directors level, that Canada Soccer is not filing its financial statements as required by Corporations Canada?
Madam Chair, I can take that, and then perhaps Paul Claude or Stephanie can follow. I have no understanding of what the honourable member is speaking of. We have been in compliance with everything required to us by law, whether that is through CRA, whether it's through Sport Canada or whether it's through any of the government institutions that we must report to. I have no understanding of what the member is speaking of.
So this comes as a surprise too. I wanted to ask the board members, does the board of directors, as we saw with Hockey Canada, have in-camera meetings with no minutes kept of certain decisions?
So to the chair, as part of our regular board meetings, we are updated on the filings and to our knowledge, similar to what Mr. Cochrane said, all of our filings are up to date so that the comment from the member is not in keeping with what we have come to know. And like all boards,
respect that was not my question. My question was, does the board of Canada Soccer have meetings or part of meetings that are in camera with no minutes kept?
Like all boards, we do have in-camera sessions. That's part of best practice at the end of every board meeting. There are minutes kept of those.
I will move on to the representation agreement and the response of Canada's national women's and men's teams. This was a statement that was issued on July 13th of last year. Speaking to Rick Westhead's article, it says, Rick Westhead's article raises serious concerns about whether Canada Soccer can be a proper steward of our sport and the revenues associated with the women's and men's national teams under the current leadership and governance structure. It also raises serious concerns that the sponsorship and broadcast revenues associated with the national teams for the next 15 years, important future revenue streams that are growing as a result of the players' success and the excitement surrounding the FIFA World Cup coming to Canada in 2026, are being transferred to owners of a for-profit professional men's league and used instead for their benefit. Did the board do any evaluation of what the broadcast rights would actually entail? And I do cite the $250 million a year that is part of the broadcasting rights around MLS, paid for by Apple TV. These are huge sums of money. Was there any discussion at the board level of what the actual evaluation of the broadcast rights would be?
Alors, je peux répondre en partie à cette question et M. Cochrane peut-être pourra compléter.
So I can give you an answer, and Mr. Cochrane may be able to add to what I have to say. Based on the information that we received, we believe that in 2022, Canadian soccer business received $2.8 million in sponsorships of all sorts. This may be incorrect, and Mr. Cochrane may add something to correct me. But as I was saying earlier, under the agreement that we have with CSB, when we're partners, and some of that sum should be given to us, comes to us, and then another part of it is to be used to fund a Canadian league. Nevertheless, even at 50-50, we would be at $4.1 million, and that's pretty much the revenue that we receive on an annual basis. So that's very close to reality in terms of the sums that CSB receives in sponsorship compared to what we actually receive ourselves. I will interrupt you. Please forgive me. My question was, did you evaluate the total value of the agreement? And if I understand correctly, the answer is no. You didn't carry out an early evaluation of it.
Within the Organization of Canada Soccer is entitled to business class. Is this something that only goes to certain executive members? We've been hearing, of course, that our women's and men's teams have traveled in economy. And finally, is it true that there have been special gifts provided to members of the leadership team?
I can answer that question, Madam Chair.
That you are over time, but if you can give me a very quick answer, very short, I'll allow it.
I can be as succinct as possible. Gifts provided to the board of directors are somewhere in the range of about $250 a year, and that is a Christmas gift. Generally speaking, what they receive are gifts related to Nike apparel, and Canada Soccer branded apparel. Business class flights are provided to our national teams who fly overseas. If a domestic flight is provided for our national teams, they fly premium economy. So when our women's national teams flew to Australia and to Brazil, the entire team flew in business class.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cochrane. All right, and that ends our first round. We now go to the second round, and it's a 5-minute round. Once again, I would like everyone to please be as concise as possible in your questions and answers. Now, we begin the second round with the Conservatives, Marilyn Gladue. Marilyn, you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I'll start with you, Mr. Cochrane. Have you had any meetings with the Minister of Sport, Minister St. Onge, about safe sport?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. I haven't had any in-person meetings with the Minister, but we've had several conversations over the last few months about safe sport, yes.
What kind of concerns did the Minister express?
Initially, the concerns were more around our involvement with the office, the OSIC, and with the SDRCC and the creation of the independent third party. We were open and transparent with the Minister and her office about our desire and intent to be a part of that body. And we worked over the last several months within 2022 to make sure that that was done, and are now and happily That's a part of that group.
So I'm very happy to hear your words today talking about how you want to make sure there is pay equity and that there is equal support for women in sport, because the day that we had them at committee was actually the day that an announcement came out that there actually would be movement in that direction. So I'm happy to see that. But I'm a bit disturbed. We received a brief that is currently being translated for the rest of the committee members from essentially whistleblowers that want name protection. And the report is called Unequal and Unsafe, the Women's Game Under Canada Soccer. And in here, there are a lot of ugly allegations, but the one I want to focus on, we've seen in other sports, sexual abuse that was not managed well. And there is, as I'm sure you're aware, there were numerous allegations against Bob Berarda in 2008. And subsequently, he has been charged in 2022 in BC. But he left your organization and went and coached provincially. And I just want to understand, how could that possibly happen, that there were these allegations against this guy and the board knew it in 2008 and let him go to another provincial organization and continue coaching girls?
Madam Chair, I can respond to the member's question. That is referencing the case around Bob Berarda, and as you described, there were failures and gaps in Canada Soccer at that time that allowed, just as you described, him to proceed and continue to coach. Quite recently, within the last 2 years, the Canada Soccer commissioned the McLaren report, which was an independent study around identifying those gaps for Canada Soccer around this incident and ensuring that going forward, there were measures taken to ensure that not only this type of situation happen again, but that Canada Soccer was better prepared around educating everyone within the soccer system and improving its safe sport practices. Those recommendations have been actioned by both the board when it came to policy and the operations team. It's resulted in a creation of a safe sport roster and working with Alison Forsyth and ITP Sport. And I believe Mr. Cochrane can correct me, but I believe there is an update due today to be released on how Canada Soccer has fared in complying with all of those recommended steps.
Oh, very good.
Thank you, Matt.
One other question for Mr. Cochrane, and that is, you mentioned that this deal with CSB is a bad deal because obviously they get to make all the money from all the franchised team paraphernalia. How are you going to get out of this deal?
30
Thank you
seconds, please.
Thank you for the question, and I'll try to keep it under 30 seconds, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, I didn't say that it was a bad deal. I did say that it was a deal that required some modernization. And quite frankly, when I took over in my position that I am in now, the Canadian Premier League and the CSB just hired a new CEO at the same time. And the moment he arrived, the two of us had begun having discussions about how we could modernize this agreement to further deliver some of the things that they've been delivering for the previous 4 or 5 years. But modernize it in such a way that was a benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Cochrane. Thank you very much. And I now go to the Liberals. Lisa Hepner. Lisa, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll pick up again with Mr. Cochrane if I could. Mr. Cochrane, I noticed during your opening statement that you professed a lot of respect and admiration for the members of the women's team. But I think that when they were here testifying before us a couple of weeks ago, we heard that they don't feel respected by Soccer Canada, that they don't have confidence in Soccer Canada or faith that Soccer Canada is there to support them. And I'll read you a particular quote that stood out for me. Christine Sinclair said, and I quote, "On a personal note, I have never been more insulted than I was last year by Canada Soccer's own president, Nick Bontis, as we met with him to discuss our concerns. I was tasked with outlining our compensation ask on behalf of the women's national team. The president of Canada Soccer listened to what I had to say and then later in the meeting referred back to it as, what was it Christine was bitching about?" Would you respond to that comment? I don't know if you were there, and how you react to hearing how she was treated during that meeting.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Madam Chair. And of course, if any of my colleagues would like to chime in, I'm more than willing to start. Christine Sinclair is a legend in our sport. She represents the best of what we are and the best of women's sport on a global stage. What was said and what was commented on, and I can assure the committee on behalf of Canada Soccer and assure all Canadians at the same time, does not represent how we view Christine Sinclair and the esteem with which we hold her in. I'm not sure if Stephanie or Paul Claude want to add to that.
Yes, as a board member, I can say that that comment was unequivocally out of line and contrary to our values, which include respect. And as a board member, it was devastating to hear that was a comment directed at Christine, or a comment directed at anyone part of the soccer, the Canadian soccer community. We have values that we are to live every day, and treatment of anyone in that manner is not okay and not acceptable. And it flies in the face of what we stand for. So I was not a party to that conversation that was referenced, but certainly it was taken with that, and agree with Mr. Cochrane that Christine, her teammates are not only phenomenal, globally recognized soccer players, but they're also role models, and they needed to be treated with the respect accorded to them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Mr. Cochrane, just moving on, you mentioned also that both teams will be paid the same regardless of their gender identity, but what we heard from the women's player the women's team players as well, is it wasn't just about their own pay, but it was about equity on the way that their teams are able to develop and the way that young people in the sport are able to develop. So they were talking about things like having enough staff, having enough training, having enough medical personnel, having a professional league that they can aspire to play in. Can you respond to those complaints?
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you, Madam Chair. I can respond by saying that we have and will continue to provide our national teams with all of the resources available to us to be successful. As I mentioned in our opening comments, we haven't been perfect, and we understand and recognize that we have made mistakes. When we do make them, we try as quickly as possible to rectify those. And did so after the meeting in Orlando to recognize that some of the issues and some of the gaps that were existing, we needed to close. Immediately following that meeting, we held a board meeting to make sure that the board was aware of the incremental spend that was going to be required to get the national team to a state where they were comfortable and felt like they were going to be successful. What I will say too is, in regards to the professional league comment, about a year ago today, we had engaged and hired a women's professional lead, a head of women's professional soccer, to help drive this conversation forward. As this committee knows, Project 8, which is led by one of our former alumni, Diana Matheson, is looking to launch a league in 2025, and we have met weekly with that group to be able to make sure that they are prepared to meet the criteria for membership, but also the criteria to be able to run a league and sustain a league in our country. And we'll continue to work with them to make sure that that's a reality.
Thank you very much. And now we go to Mr. Lemire. Sébastien, you have 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How can you come before us and tell us that you have done a good job developing women's soccer? We still see the pay gap, the gap in preparatory resources and in training facilities. Now, regarding the collective agreement, you know that the girls came to the committee in the morning, and I believe they were extremely courageous. And I think that what you did deserves a yellow card. Very frankly. Were the amounts due respected in the agreements according to the calendar established? Were there any missed or late payments? Would it be possible to provide us with all reports? The committee would like them.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And if I could respond through you, the commitment that we made to pay both of our national teams equally was started in January of 2022 when we first met with the women's national team. In June 2022, the offer that we have put in place before the two national teams was all about pay equity, and it meant real equal pay, not percentages. And what it also committed to was finding an opportunity to equalize the high performance environments that they live and breathe in. That was the goal, and that was the design. So we, for the better part of 8 to 9 months, had been negotiating in good faith and hadn't made, and sometimes to the detriment of our association.
Did you have reports from Canadian Soccer Business? Did you receive those amounts? Can you send us those numbers?
Madam Chair, and through the clerk, perhaps if I could get the exact things that you're ultimately looking for, I'm happy to provide them.
Est-ce que vous pouvez nous déposer aussi l'évaluation de...
Could you also table the documents on your status as amateur sport organization recognized by the Government of Canada? Do you have a legal opinion confirming that everything is in order to recognize you as an amateur sport organization?
Thank you again for the question. And Madam Chair, yes, we have all of those opinions about our status and our tax status as a registered amateur sport organization, and we're happy to provide those to the clerk and to the committee when available.
Thank
Merci.
you very much. Thank you. And now I go to Ms. Julian. Peter, you have 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Sadly and tragically, I would say that Canada Soccer also gets a red card when it comes to protecting male and female players across the country. There was a sexual predator who was not prevented for years on end from being involved in Canada Soccer. I would like to know how Canada Soccer learned lessons from that.
These egregious cases of sexual abuse are something that Canada Soccer needs to take seriously. So how many complaints are currently being investigated by Canada Soccer, and how are those complaints being investigated?
Thank you very much for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. The incident and the investigation that took place in regards to Bob Berarda, which I believe the member is referencing, is the only case that we have had as a national body. I believe that we have done a very good job over the last couple of years, and after the recommendations that were made by the McLaren report, we'll even go further than required within the document itself. We will make this the safest sport possible. There was a reference made to how Mr. Berarda was able to kind of continue coaching, and again, I'll make it very clear that this was a 2008 incident that we investigated just last year and made the McLaren World Final. But there's a general misinterpretation of what a license is and the control that Canada Soccer had at that time over the ability to control coaches. People generally equate a coaching license with a driver's license, for example.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt. Time. I only have a few seconds left. I've asked how many cases are being investigated and how are they being investigated. That is my question, and I find it stretches credibility to say there are no cases to be investigated given the size and scope of Canada Soccer across the country. So how many cases are being investigated, either at the provincial level or nationally, and how are they being investigated?
You have 15 seconds, Mr. Cochrane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 0 cases currently being investigated nationally, and as of March 1st, 2023, we are now a part of the independent third-party investigative body, so the question would have to be asked of them. And provincially, I don't know the answer, but I can certainly get it for you.
Thank you very much. And now we go to the Conservatives, and we have Mr. Shields. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the witnesses being here today. And that's why we need the past president also being here from some of the answers. So words matter. So, Mr. Cochrane, when you said that you got the board together to see how you were going to make the women's team more successful or be successful, that is a negative thing, because they are successful and have been for many years. So be careful with what you say with your words. They matter. You also said per match, they're paid by per match. I've been involved in sports a long time. Those organizations who are responsible for organizing matches can really make a difference. Some teams can get to play a lot of matches and some teams don't. How are you going to take it upon yourself to make sure the women's team get paid equal because they play as many games?
Thank you for the question. And again, through you, Madam Chair. I don't think I ever made the reference that I'm going to make or we're going to start to make the women's national team successful. We acknowledge that they have been successful and have been successful.
You just did a minute ago.
Well, if I did, it was a mistake. I certainly didn't mean that, and I know that the women's team would know that I don't think that at all. Secondly, to your question, generally speaking, with the exception of perhaps 2021 and 2022, when the World Cup qualifying campaign for the men was elongated due to some cancellations in 2020 based off of the COVID-19 pandemic. Generally speaking, our women play around the same time. We don't have the ability to dictate when our men and women play. We operate within FIFA-mandated international windows, and there are, generally speaking, 5 to 6 of those windows available in any given year. Those windows are about 10 to 12 days long, which would mean that over the course of a calendar year, our men and women are with us, Canada Soccer, for anywhere between 50 and 60 to 70 days.
Thank you for that. I need to move on.
So the 80%, they participate
Thank
with
you,
their
sir.
professional clubs.
How many players are there in Canada's minor soccer system? How many players do you collect the $9 from?
That number is anywhere between 750,000 to about 800,000.
Meaning that you get $9 for each one of those?
That is correct.
Thank you. Now, when we talk about the contract that says there's no clause in it, the original agreement, to allocate for growth element. So is this part of the contract that you don't call bad but needs to be modernized, where there's no growth contract in it?
Thank you again for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. As I identified in the opening statement, and I believe as I said at some point during this meeting, that is one of the elements that we need to discuss with Canada Soccer Business to modernize. There are 2 elements of the existing deal that we would like to see adjusted, and those are the ability for us to reap the rewards of the success of our national teams and the organization and benefit from incremental revenue. And the second is to address in some way, shape, or form the term.
So if CSB and CPL are 2 legal entities, if for some reason CPL folded next year for financial reasons, would CSA have to continue honoring the CSB represented agreement? And where would the money go?
Sorry, Madam Chair, there was a brief delay. I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat the question, please?
So you've got the CSB and you've got the CPL. If the CPL doesn't function, if it dissolves, where's the money go?
Thank you for the question. So, Madam Chair, the CPL is a member league of Canada Soccer, and Canada Soccer Business, Canadian Soccer Business, CSB, is the agency to deliver our marketing and broadcast assets of the association. So, if for some reason the CPL were not in existence, the relationship and the contract would still exist with Canada Soccer Business.
Still be paying it.
That's my understanding, but I have to look at the contract in detail to understand how the dissolution would occur.
So it's very interesting. The last point I'll make is that now you're going to be shortly having a meeting with the players and going through all the information. That was something that they brought up with us. So that's happening now. Is that a consequence of them meeting with the parliamentary committee?
Through you, Madam Chair, it is not. We have had several sessions with both men's and women's national teams. This was a previously arranged and scheduled session that we had. We are having it later this afternoon. In July 2022, we also had a session with Canada Soccer Business and our women's national team to walk through the agreement itself. That session was approximately an hour and a half, where the women and their council and their representatives had the opportunity with which to ask questions of that agreement.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shields. And then I go for Anthony Housefather. Anthony, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm just going to start by reminding everybody where we were. Motion M37, adopted at the meeting of November 30th, 2018, makes very clear that a March 2018 preliminary agreement by the board to sign the document is no longer valid, because the board reconsidered multiple times during the year, and on November 30th, they specifically asked the negotiating committee to come back to them and said that they would then need to decide whether to approve it. So I think you have a significant governance issue if you're relying on a March 2018 date, and I suggest your board look at that. You have asked us not to deal with the substance of the agreement at this meeting. You've asked for us to do that only in a private meeting, but you yourselves have offered terms of the agreement unilaterally at this meeting. For example, Mr. Cochrane, you spoke of broadcasting rights. and you said that you are now receiving an annual amount for broadcasting rights. What you didn't say, sir, is that's an annual advance that can be recouped on broadcasting rights in Section 9.5 of the agreement. Is it not true that the amount you spoke of is actually an amount that's an advance that can be recouped if CSB doesn't reach that amount for broadcasting?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair. If I'm understanding your question correctly, you're talking about international broadcast rights. Is that correct?
Question was, you said that you were getting an annual amount for broadcasting rights, and that amount is an amount that can be recouped. It's an advance that CSB can recoup if the broadcasting rights don't reach that amount. Correct?
Madam Chair, I believe what is being referenced is the international broadcast rights and the amount of $250,000 per year, or $500,000. I can't remember.
Under that section of the agreement. Correct. If you don't reach it. Also, what you didn't say is you signed away to CSB national broadcasting rights and you get no monies for that, correct?
Madam Chair, the amount that we receive for national broadcast rights or have ever received for national broadcast rights has been nil. We have never received any funding to have
yes,
our games
correct. But if CSB sells national broadcasting rights, they get all the monies for it. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Has CSB ever been in material breach of the agreement? My colleague asked you that. You didn't answer. Have they ever failed to make payment?
Madam Chair, we have had one situation in 2020 where there's a disagreement between the two parties, but we are managing through that disagreement through the clauses within the existing contract and are having those discussions about that situation.
But theoretically, at one point, they were in material breach of the agreement, and you could have terminated the agreement had you wanted to. Why did you sign an agreement that included sponsorship and broadcasting rights for the women's team with an organization which was providing money to the Canadian Premier League but to no corresponding women's league?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Madam Chair, just to confirm, I did not sign the agreement. I was not a part of the negotiations of that agreement, but I'm living with
not you personally, today. Mr. Cochrane. Canada Soccer signed the agreement. Mr. Reid signed the agreement. But the agreement, again, was with an organization that funds a men's league but doesn't fund a women's league, but yet the women's team was a core asset that you included in the agreement. Why did you do that? Why didn't you save the women's team for somebody who would fund a women's league?
So, Madam Chair, the agreement that we signed with Canada Soccer Business was for them to sell the assets of our association, as well as the assets of the Canadian Premier League. While it was not included in the agreement for a women's league to be developed, it was my understanding that it was always in Canada Soccer Business' mind to ultimately create a women's league. Now that there is a women's league on the horizon, the focus for us now is to help that organization not only meet membership, but to be able to set the criteria for them to be able to be sanctioned and to be successful and sustainable when they kick a ball in 2025.
Good thing. So let me come back to the agreement. Why did Canada Soccer agree to a term of the agreement that could be renewed for 10 years only unilaterally by CSB? Why would you have allowed CSB to unilaterally determine after 10 years whether or not the agreement was extended or not? That's a very unusual clause. Why would you have agreed to that?
30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as someone who wasn't a part of those discussions, I would probably prefer my colleague from the board, Monsieur Poco, to answer.
Please be brief, Mr. Burbank.
Oui, je peux répondre à la question. Oui.
Yes, I can answer. Okay, so the agreement was for a certain number of years, and for us, this assured our financial security over those years. So, of course, we had a real interest in signing a long-term agreement. Now, CSB was also taking on financial risk by signing this, and if they didn't know whether the risk would be more considerable in future years or not, so they did receive the authorization in the agreement. It's a clause that allows them to withdraw or not from the agreement 10 years down the road, given that they were the ones who would be investing mostly at the outset. So the money that we needed to set up the league.
is over. Thank you. Now, and we're going to a third round. Now, we have, I would say, the ability to, I'm going to cut the third round down so that there would be 4 minutes for the people that are giving a big round and 2 minutes for the bloc and the NDP. So I begin with the Conservatives in the third round for 4
Madame la
minutes.
Présidente,
Please.
pourquoi il est...
Madam Chair, why? It's only 22 minutes past noon. Why are we cutting time?
One goes over time, and so I'm adding that because we need to stop at at about 47 minutes before, so we can do our 15-minute meeting. And so I'm factoring in the fact that in every question and answer, people have gone over time. Okay? Thank you. So now 4 minutes, Conservatives, do you have someone?
Yes, Mr. Waugh.
Okay, Kevin, go ahead. 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, this deal with the Canadian soccer business has absolutely handcuffed the Canadian Soccer Association. I think if you look at the deal that you supposedly signed, although we don't see any indication of that, and you've extended it maybe even to 2037. That's why the women are upset when they came here and talked about it. The Canadian soccer business actually right now controls Canadian soccer from the agreement that apparently was made, and people are seeing this. So, Mr. Berube, you were there, and was there ever a vote on this? Was there ever a vote taken to the agreement with Canadian soccer business?
Tout à fait.
Yes, indeed. At the outset, let me say that in 2018, when the agreement came into effect, we had, for that year, 2018, $1.4 million from various sponsors. That was our income, our revenue stream. So we then had the ability to have a minimum $3 million from CSB. So just based on the figures, the agreement was a good deal for us at the time. And I have also said, and I'm happy to repeat, that we agreed to go ahead with the meeting on the 27th of March 2018, a motion adopted unanimously by the members of the Board of Directors. And we also asked...
I'm running short on time here. I'm going to ask you to table the deal in confidence with us, the committee members, if you could. You have already? Yeah. Okay, so we'll do. The other question I have, $9 registration fee, $7 million coming in annually to the Canadian Soccer Association. Where does the money go? Do you have a slush fund like hockey did? And if so, how many slush funds? I guess, Mr. Cochrane, you know, we sat here last June, surprisingly, finding these slush funds. Your numbers of $750,000 to $800,000 giving you $9 registration fee. Is there any slush funds associated this with Canadian soccer?
Thank you very much for the question, and through you, Madam Chair, there is absolutely no slush fund that Canada Soccer has that was in any way, shape, or form anything like you just described. Where does the money go? The Canada Soccer and all of its revenue that we generate goes into delivering the game in this country, delivering a forward-looking sport. What it goes to is our national teams programs, our youth national teams programs, our coaching development, referee development, safe sport, all of the aspects that come with governing a sport and a global sport in this country. That is what all of those resources and the money goes to.
Okay, I've got maybe a minute left. There's talk that FIFA will give us another game in 2026. How much money will Canada Soccer get from the games in Vancouver and Toronto in 2026? And the talk of an extra game in this country if that's what's been approved. Do you get any money whatsoever from hosting the 2 games, maybe 3 games in 2026? Or does it all go elsewhere?
Thank you very much for the question, and thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be done in 30 seconds. It is unknown what Canada Soccer will receive from those games, and just to correct the record and the member, we're not talking about 1 or 2 games, we're talking about 10, 12, maybe 15 games over the course of over the 104-game World Cup.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kevin. Now we're going to go to Anthony Housefather for 4 minutes, Anthony.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And coming back to the agreement, gentlemen, and again, I keep hearing this March 2018 approval date, and a March 2018 approval date doesn't hold water when your November board minutes show that the board was waiting on approval, and obviously that approval is no longer valid. So let me just go to the question of, normally in an agreement of the type of the CSB deal, you wouldn't just have a fixed amount. You'd certainly have a guaranteed amount you would have negotiated, a minimum guaranteed amount. But then you would make provision for escalation in the event, for example, the women's team won the Olympics, in the event that the men's team qualified for the World Cup. But that's not part of what this agreement is, and it's confused a lot of people. So can you explain why you didn't provide for escalations in the event of better performance by the national teams? In a very brief way, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, and I'll let Paul Claude answer the board-directed question.
Sir, please.
But from my perspective, what I'd said in the opening and what I had said numerous times throughout the questioning of this committee, that it is our goal to have those discussions about how we can share in some of the upside and the success of our national teams.
But you didn't provide for it in the agreement. So who did the shoddy negotiation of this agreement? Who is the person we should call to ask questions about this agreement from the Canada Soccer perspective? Is it Mr. Bontis? Is it Mr. Reid? Who is it?
I will have to defer that question to a member of the board who were here at the time.
Monsieur Bérubé, est-ce que vous connaissez qui était le responsable?
Mr. Bérubé, do you know who was in charge of negotiating the contract at the board level? Yes. There was a small committee set up to carry out the negotiation of the basic agreement. And then the members of the board of directors were informed of how the agreement was being developed. Yes, but who was on the team? Names, please. People on the committee, the negotiation committee. I can give you the names of a few people whom I remember. Right, but if you don't have all the names, please send them to the committee. Very well.
Appointment of Brazilian Victoria's Secret model Adriana Lima as FIFA's fan ambassador in the lead up to the Women's World Cup. Would Canada Soccer believe that a man's Calvin Klein underwear model would be a good fan ambassador for a men's World Cup? She's never played soccer. Why would she be chosen as a fan ambassador for the Women's World Cup? Isn't that demeaning to the women players that Canada and other teams put on the field? Mr. Cochrane, does Canada Soccer have a position on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. It's actually the first time I'm hearing this reference made, but as it is described, I believe that those days of presenting the women's game in the way that you just described should have been long gone.
I appreciate that, because FIFA has announced that. It's been gotten some extensive press, and I hope Canada Soccer's board will take a position on that. What is Canada Soccer's position on bringing in Visit Saudi as a key sponsor of the Women's World Cup, despite Saudi Arabia's appalling record on women's human rights?
Thank you again for the question, and through you, Madam Chair, I believe that Visit Saudi is no longer in consideration for a sponsorship. My understanding was that, despite the fact that they were looking to invest significant amounts of money into that tournament, that it was recognized and the voices of the women's players made sure that didn't happen.
Last question. When Mr. Bontis was president of Soccer Canada, he also became a vice president of CONCACAF, leading to an estimated payment of over $125,000. Did he declare a conflict of interest at the board meetings, and did the board ever ask him to recuse himself on matters related to CONCACAF?
It has to be a very quick answer. Mr. Cochrane.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I don't know whether the discussion was disclosed at the board meeting, but I think there was no correlation between his appointment with CONCACAF and his position within Canada Soccer as the president of Canada Soccer. Those are two separate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The time is up. I'm going to move now to Mr. Monsieur Lemire, Sébastien, for 2 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you please provide us with the expenses and the income, so the ins and outs and how you specifically you supported women's soccer? I'd like to know how you've spent your money, and I would like you to provide that data to us. As of today, have you suspended Bob Berada given the sexual abuse that he carried out while he was a member of your organization?
And yes, Bob Berarda has been suspended post.
Dans vos états financiers de 2018 à
In your 2018 to now financial statements, which are very difficult to find on your site, there is note 8 mentioning a case brought before you by an athlete in Alberta. Do you follow up on these matters, and have you met your fiduciary duties, and have you informed Sports Canada of such situations, and if so, when and how?
Thank you for the question. Madam Chair, I had a very difficult time understanding the beginning. It was a reference made to a case in Alberta, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Lemieux?
Dans vos états financiers.
In your financial statements, 2018 to the present, there is a note, number 8, mentioning a case brought against you by an Alberta athlete. Are you facing many such cases? Because you said earlier that that was not the case at all.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I have no understanding or recollection of the case that is being referenced. I can certainly look into it and provide information to the committee with whatever I find.
Please do that, Mr. Cochrane. Please send it to the clerk. You have 30 seconds.
Dernière question.
My last question. We often hear mention of the Canadian soccer business and its relationship with your board of directors. How independent are you from the Canadian soccer business on Soccer Canada? Is there a member of Canadian soccer on the board of directors, and have you declared any conflicts of interests?
Please be very concise with your answer. Mr. Cochrane?
I believe Monsieur Berube is trying to answer, but he's just on mute.
I'm sorry, Mr. Berube. We are now gone 12 minutes over.
Désolé. Alors, rapidement.
Very short.
So sorry. There is no member of the board of director of Canadian soccer business on our board any more than there's a member of our board sitting on Canadian soccer business.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now go to Mr. Julian Peter for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're getting information in as we speak, as we question you, that contradicts some of the testimony that we've heard. I'd asked earlier about gifts to the Board of Directors. The response was no. Can you confirm that over $11,000 was provided in bespoke suits to members of the Board of Governors, as reported by Rick Westhead on October 21st, 2022?
Thank you for the question. And yes, the member is correct that in 2021, suits were provided to the members of the board of directors to replace suits that were provided to them 10 years prior. So for 10 years,
thank you for that. I have to move on. We'd also talked about Canada Soccer's financial reports. Jay Fitzsimmons reports that as a soliciting nonprofit corporation, Canada Soccer must file financial reports posted online via Corporations Canada. But the reports aren't there. Hockey Canada had a similar situation. Like Canada Soccer, Hockey Canada is a soliciting nonprofit corporation. And like Canada Soccer, their financial reports weren't posted on Corporations Canada until Hockey Canada came under scrutiny, and suddenly 9 years of financial reports were uploaded at once in October 2022. We would like to hear, as committee, from Canada Soccer as to when they're going to post their obligatory financial reports. We would also like to hear from Canada Soccer about any other responses that have been provided that have not been fulsome The reality is Canada Soccer has a responsibility to be transparent.
30 seconds.
And so, thank you, Madam Chair. What I would suggest is the somewhat contradictory answers and some of the stonewalling that we've heard today is not appropriate for Canada Soccer and for the hundreds of thousands of people that are involved in soccer. Vous avez une responsabilité pour une transparence et j'espère...
You're responsible for transparency, and I hope that the next time that Canada Soccer representatives come to us or people designated to represent them are before our committee, they will provide correct and complete answers to us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter. Then we go to, for the Conservatives, we have 4 minutes. Anyone taking this?
Thank you. Thank you to the witnesses here and appreciate it. Back following up in the sense that it has been questioned whether you approved this particular agreement. It has been stated numerous times that the March agreement wasn't an official agreement of it, that it was later in November. Do you have any documentation which you can support your position versus the one that we have asked here?
Alors, avec plaisir.
Yes, with pleasure. Madam Chair, I can say that the agreement was unanimously approved by the Board of Directors on the 27th of March 2008, a motion that was duly taken note of, and we then asked for changes, possible changes to some of the elements in the agreement. So it was based on those changes being figured out. And then in December 2018, the Board of Directors informally discussed over the phone this matter, and we received assurances that the different requests that had been made had been met, and so the agreement was signed on the 1st of January 2019. So yes, the agreement was approved.
Formal minutes of a vote to approve it with the amendments that you agreed to.
Please respond.
The vote took place, Madam Chair, on the 27th of March 2018. And there was no vote after that.
Agreeing to the amendments in December, but there's no recorded minutes of that vote. Or there was a vote in December, just an agreement to those amendments, but there was no minutes of a final vote on the amendments that had been agreed to.
There was no final vote then about the agreement, given that we had already agreed to the agreement. The changes that we had asked for were changes that were, I would say, regarding secondary aspects of the agreement. So most of the important terms and clauses of the agreement had been agreed to. So in the phone discussion in December 2018, the Board of Director members didn't need to formally vote on it. They simply needed to take note of the fact that the slight changes had been put in and that the whole thing could be signed, which did take place thereafter.
Final comment. We've heard a lot of words here today about how the organization wants to move ahead. The McLaren report had huge actions that you say that you've actioned. But, the whistleblower brief that we've received says that there's still serious issues at Canada Soccer. And so this committee will be looking into this further, and we can expect to come back to see that things actually do change there. Thank you.
Is that it, Ms. Ledoux? Thank you then, and we're going to go to Mr. Housefather for 4 minutes, please, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. One of the questions that I had for you related to the reopening of nominations for the post of president. There have been a number of comments about the fact that Mr. Bontas resigned at a time when it made it almost impossible for anybody to come forward to seek the position of president other than Ms. Crooks. Has the timing for nominations been reopened?
Madam Chair, I can take that question.
Go ahead.
According to our bylaws, the vice president shall take on the role of acting president until the annual members meeting. So in our case, that will be in early May. The nominations committee has posted a call for nominations for both of the the officer positions, vice president and president, as laid out in our bylaws. So that call for nominations has gone out, and the nominations committee is accepting nominations for those two positions who will be voted on at the AMM in May.
Okay. One of the issues that seems to be lacking in Canada Soccer is the fact that the national teams don't have representatives on the board. In other sports, there's athletes' councils that represent athletes. I don't see that in Canada Soccer. Are you considering changing your bylaws or recommending, in terms of the nominations committee, that somebody representing the national teams comes onto the board?
Actually, to the chair, that is not the case. In our bylaws, we have mandated that a former member of the national teams be on our board, and we have that in Brittany Temko Baxter, who was elected 2 years ago. She is an independent director, and that provision is now entrenched in our bylaws.
I understand, but I was saying, I didn't say a former member. I didn't say a former member of the national team. I said a current member, or alternatively, setting up an athletes' council where the current athletes feel that they have some representation, as we have, for example, now in Swimming Canada.
Yes, to the chair, that is an excellent point. And as I referenced, our need to improve our stakeholder engagement, that is something that we are exploring to work with the athletes on the national teams and have better lines of communication. So yes.
Thank you. And one of the things that also came forward was the lack of disclosure of the CSB agreement to the national teams. Will you commit to disclosing in full, not through a briefing, the terms of the agreement to the national team in confidence, I assume, but it's already been leaked everywhere anyways?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is absolutely the case, that we will not just do what we did in July 2022 for the women's national team, in which we offered for the men's national team, but we will continue to engage our national teams as we go through the discussions about what the new agreement may or may not look like, and involve them in deep discussions around what the ramifications of that are.
And last, the question that didn't come up today, but I think it's been puzzling everybody. Last year, a lot of money was spent on the men's team because of the World Cup and because of qualifications, and I understand that. You had a disproportionate amount spent on the men's team last year. You can't expect in World Cup years that it's going to be equal. But it seems like you borrowed from resources to fund the men's team, and now this year you find yourself short of funds and unable to spend a commensurate amount of money on the women's team. How did that happen?
30 seconds.
Thank you for the question, and Madam Chair, the member is correct that we did invest significantly in our men's national team and our women's national team in 2022. And with the resources available to us in 2023, have put forward a program and a plan to make sure that our women are successful in Australia and New Zealand. And that discussion with the women's national team staff and support staff has put them in a position where they feel themselves that they can be successful given the changes we've made.
Thank you, Mr. Cochrane. And that brings an end to the witness's testimony today and with the questions and answers. And I want to thank the witnesses for coming and answering the questions. And I would like to take about a minute to suspend so that the witnesses can log off and we can continue with our meeting for the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize that the business meeting has been called in order to discuss motions that have been presented to this committee. And so I was hoping to move a motion at this time that has been put on the order paper or has been given notice of.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Thomas, please.
Okay, thank you. The motion that I was hoping we could pass, and of course my hope is that we can do it quite quickly, is that pursuant to the order of reference from the House dated Wednesday, February 15th, 2023, the committee invite the Minister of Canadian Heritage to appear for no fewer than 2 hours regarding the main estimates 2023 to 2024, and that this committee take place as soon as possible and no later than May 31st, 2023. Given that this is a customary practice, I present this motion to the committee for consideration.
Thank you. Now, the committee has heard the motion, and is there anyone who is opposed to the motion who wishes to speak? Seeing I cannot see the floor, but I can see on the virtual, there are no hands up. Clerk, is there anyone on the floor?
No.
No, so then I will call the question. Please, clerk, calling the question, is there anyone opposed to the motion? Again, I'll ask.
I think it passes unanimously, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. And now we will move on to, I think there's another motion on the floor that we would need. Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. The second motion that I would wish to move is that pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee invite the Minister of Canadian Heritage to appear for no more than 2 hours regarding the subject matter of the supplementary estimates 2022 to 2023, and that this meeting take place as soon as possible and no later than April 30th, 2023. Again, this is customary practice.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Now, I'm going to ask the question again. Is there anyone opposing this motion? I see no hands up on the virtual. If there's no one in
Mr. Julian has his hand up.
Yes, Peter?
A question to Madame Thomas. So the idea would be to have 2 separate appearances or to combine the 2 appearances in one?
Clarification, Ms. Thomas?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Julian. I appreciate the question. It would be customary that we would hear from the Heritage Minister on each of these, and so I am putting it forward as 2 separate motions and therefore 2 separate appearances.
Thank you. Anyone opposing this motion? If so, I guess, if there's no one on the floor, clerk, I think the motion passes unanimously.
Monsieur Le Maire has his hand up.
Monsieur Le Maire, sorry about that.
I
just wanted to see if the committee is comfortable having 2 separate meetings, or could both of these subjects be discussed in the same meeting for 1 hour each? I think it might be sufficient to have 1 hour each during the same meeting.
You are therefore moving an amendment? Because the motion on the floor is for 4 hours, 2 hours each. So are you moving that we then go to 2 hours in total with 1 hour each, Mr. Lemire?
Oui.
Yes.
Is there anyone opposing that? No opposition. Then I will call the question.
Sorry, Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Sorry, just a point of order. I guess I would just seek clarification from the clerk. The one motion did already pass, and so I guess I'm curious then if this motion would be amended. The other one still did pass.
Yes,
so then you would
the other
have
one did pass, and
so
now we're speaking to an amendment to your second motion. Thank you.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Then you still have the first motion and you have the second motion amended, is my understanding.
I don't know if it's been amended. I don't know if everyone is unanimously in support of the amendment or not. Can I please get an indication? I see no hands up, so obviously...
Madam Chair, maybe I can just clarify.
Clerk?
I believe there's a motion to amend the second motion
Yes.
in such a manner as that it would be included as part of the motion that was already
Part of the
adopted.
first motion,
so that
yes.
both of these would
Yes.
happen on the same day.
All right, so seeing
Ms.
no
Gladue has her hand up.
opposition- Yes, Ms. Gladue.
If this motion should, or amended motion should pass, my concern is this. Whenever we ask the minister, they always say they're going to come for 2 hours. And then at the last minute, they say, no, you're going to get an hour of the minister and an hour of the department officials. So let's just be clear that we really need to have the minister for 2 hours if we're going to combine these things.
Thank you, Ms. Gladue. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the question on the motion as amended, and it looks like this is unanimous. Clerk, do you have indications that something's going on? All right, so this motion passes as amended.
Mr. Housefather has his hand up.
Yes, Mr. Housefather.
Thank you. I believe the motion is passed, and I'm going to another motion now, Madam Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. Let me just finish saying that the motion is passed unanimously.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Go
ahead, Mr.
Thank you.
Housefather.
Madam Chair, I want to put forward the motion. It's a very long motion, so I'm not going to read the entire thing that I gave notice of motion of yesterday that the clerk has circulated. Il y a une phrase en français que j'ai déjà parlé au graphique.
There's a phrase in French that I've already told the clerk should be removed regarding appearing before the committee regarding number 2. The rest of the wording was good.
Was here. I don't think any of us were satisfied with the answer she gave, although I very much appreciate that Google has now agreed to send their two top American executives to us. So basically, this motion is similar to what my colleague Mr. Biddle had put forward. It's a motion about international ways that large companies are seeking to subvert parliamentary accountability. And so we're going to look at current and ongoing use of intimidation, not only in Canada, but around the world. And we're going to learn from what happens around the world. And basically, one meeting would be with Meta, where we would summon Mark Zuckerberg, Nick Clegg, and Chris Siniga. We would ask Meta to provide the documents that Google was asked to provide earlier that are set out in Little 1 and Little 2, but we will not ask for third-party documents. So parts of what were in Mr. Bill's motion, number 3 and number 4, are gone. I've revised number 2 because Google has accepted to appear, so there's no need to order them to appear again. We're simply recognizing that Mr. Walker and Mr. Gingras will appear here for 2 hours at a publicly televised meeting, and that it'll be incorporated into this study. That we'll hear from government officials, civil society, and experts from other jurisdictions like the European Union and Australia, and also the United States, that have experienced tactics that are similar to what has happened in Canada. We note that the Department of Justice in the United States is now, taking antitrust actions against Google. And then one meeting be allocated to the study of tech giants' abuse of power around the world. And we'll hear from domestic and international antitrust and competition experts. So basically, this is a motion where I think we will delve deeper into the international field. And this is not only about C18. I think we can agree or disagree with C18, and we could still support this motion because this motion talks to larger issues of how very large companies use anti-competitive monopolistic tactics to seek to influence parliaments to meet their desires. And so this is not about whether C18 is the right approach or the wrong approach. It's about how tech companies are tackling that and other similar laws around the world. And I hope, again, that we can find unanimous support for that motion I'm happy to listen to my colleagues.
Thank you,
Madam Clerk, Ms. Gladue.
Ms.
Gladue has her hand up.
And then Mrs. Thomas.
And Mr. Lemire.
Thank you, Chair.
And Mr. Lemire.
So I have just a couple of concerns about this motion. The first one is that we're asking for a huge number of these internal document memos, et cetera, to be delivered to the committee no later than March 31st. Now, about 90 days ago, I submitted an order paper question to the government trying to get a breakdown of the safe sport calls by organization. And if they can't do that in 90 days, I don't know how these people are supposed to get the documents in this time frame. And I think we asked for documents from Google previously, and the same thing happened. They didn't deliver them. So I don't know if that timeline is realistic. So that would be my first objection.
Thank you, Ms. Gladue. I go to Ms. Thomas. Ms. Thomas, your hand is up.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Thank you. Sure. I want to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Biddle put forward a motion, and it's now been replaced by this motion with House Father, and this motion is much more appropriate. And so I do appreciate that, but I do still have some concerns. No doubt about it. Meta and Google, certainly are throwing around their weight, and that is concerning. I think the Canadian public is somewhat concerned. I think Parliament is concerned. I have a bit of I also have a concern, though, with regards to this motion and the precedent that it sets. So under 1BI, it is compelling that Meta platforms provide all internal and external communications, including but not limited to emails, texts, or other forms of messages related to actions it planned to take or options it considered or is considering in relation to all Canadian regulations since January 1st, 2020, including that under Bill C-18, including but not limited to restricting the sharing of news content on its platforms in Canada. This reaches beyond the scope of looking at Meta and its decisions with regards to C-18. This is looking at its response to any government regulation or legislation. So I'd be curious as to Mr. Housefather's motivation behind that. I would also be curious with regard to the date, January 1st, 2020. Normally a date, following an election would be chosen, or a date, when the legislation C-18 was brought forward, which was April 2022. But this date of January 1st, 2020, I am curious about that as to why that one has been chosen. And then thirdly, if we're asking for all internal and external communications, Meta could have been contacted, let's say, by a content creator or by a news outlet with regard to how Meta is going to respond to government legislation. That correspondence then is, my understanding, is scoped into this. So I am very concerned with regards to the implications that this has with regard to privacy issues and freedom of speech issues. Furthermore, this has an incredibly chilling effect not only on the Canadian public, knowing that their words could be summoned, but also just on businesses in Canada. Businesses need to be able to have conversations with regard to how they're going to respond to government legislation, and they should know that they're able to have those conversations internally without government surveillance. And as soon as we start sending the message that it's okay for government to survey or to demand these types of communications, I think it puts a huge chilling effect on investment in this country. And I'm very concerned about the precedent that sets for our nation going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Mr. Housefather, would you like to respond? It's based on your motion. She's asking a question.
Sure.
Can you clarify?
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to try to answer these. The first thing with respect to Ms. Gladue, the documents in terms of delivery date, I'm flexible if somebody wants to put a later date in terms of delivery of the documents. I think it would be useful to get them during the course of the study. I do think an order paper question is different than at committees where we've asked the government to deliver documents, and when the government delivers, it has to be translated, which causes usually the delays. Here, we're not asking them to translate. They would just provide us whatever they have, and we would have to translate it. So I don't think March 31st is out of range, but I'm happy if you feel like, you want to propose an alternative date like April 15th or April, whatever. Like I don't mind. Then on Ms. Thomas's points, understandable. The first one relates to the scope of what we're asking for, and I think this is equivalent to what we asked of Google, and we all unanimously approved the Google motion. If there's something in there that is beyond Google, and the reason I put January 1st, 2020 as a date was because the Google motion had no date. It just said anything going back. And I thought that there should be that limit, that you shouldn't have to go further back than that. And I arbitrarily put January 1st, 2020, which I think was the first year we started talking about a bill like C-18. But again, if there's an alternative date that somebody wants to propose, I don't have a major issue with an alternative date. If it's January 1st, 2021 versus January 1st, 2020, I don't think I have a major issue with that. Finally, in terms of the chilling effect issue, I think that parliamentary committees frequently summon documents like this. Look at what was summoned from the We Charity. Look at what has been summoned from McKinsey at the OGO committee. Look at what we've summoned from sports federations, although they're a little bit different. I don't think that this is chilling because again, number one, if there was a litigation, for example, the United States is taking an antitrust action against Google, all of these documents would have to be produced in the context of the litigation. Parliamentary committees in other countries, such as the United States, would summon documents like these relatively frequently. So I would again acknowledge that there may be solicitor-client privilege and attorney-client privilege and litigation privilege that might attach, and if Google or Facebook have those issues, they'll identify them, and I think the committee will be flexible in addressing them. So I would since this was the language approved relatively much for Google, hopefully that's okay. I didn't want to go further. I didn't want to go less. But again, I'm open to talking to you about wording and being flexible.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. My return comment, and I understand his reasoning explained, and I appreciate that. Again, there are individual Canadians who will get scoped into this, and I do not believe that is the road we want to go down. Any individual who may have contacted Meta with regard to Bill C-18 or any other government legislation, that correspondence, because it says internal and external, must be made known to this committee. And I think that sets a very dangerous precedent. Very, very dangerous.
Thank you.
So I guess I would perhaps recommend then that we exclude that we exclude communications that were with individuals outside of individuals or individual entities outside of Meta. I don't know why we would need to include that. The other amendment that I would move then is also that we would change the date from January 1st, 2020, which seems arbitrary, and actually pick one that makes maybe a little more sense, which is April 5th, 2022, which is when Bill C-18 was tabled in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Any further discussion?
You have Monsieur Lemire
Ms. Thomas
and Ms.
has
Gladue.
an official amendment, Ms. Thomas? Are you amending this motion?
Yes, to be clear then, I would offer those as amendments that individuals or private communications from individuals would not be scoped in, and also that the date would be April 5th, 2022, which is when C-18 was tabled in the House of Commons.
Thank you. Now,
Madam Chair, I'm so sorry, point of order. Can I just make a friendly suggestion to my colleague? I think what she just wants to do is strike the words "and external." I think that the way it was worded would be very confusing. I think what she's proposing, and I'm not saying necessarily I agree, but I'm going to think about it, is just to strike the two words. It'll be all internal communications and strike the two words "and external," and then change the date. I think that's what she's seeking.
Yes, I think that's what she's seeking. So I would like to ask if there's any further discussion on the amendment that is placed, which is changing the date and also removing the word external.
We have Monsieur Lemire and Madame Gladue.
Monsieur Lemire.
La motion en général, je pense.
Well, the motion overall, I think we could finish on that, and then I'll get back to what I have to say.
Ms. Gladue?
Well, Mrs. Thomas actually made the amendment suggestion that I was going to make. The only other one I was thinking about was amending when the documents are due, but let's just leave it where it is. They'll comply as soon as they can, basically.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to see if there's anything new to discuss. We have an amendment on the floor.
Mr. Biddle.
Mr. Biddle.
Thank you so much. Again, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation coming from the tech giants through their intermediaries. And again, we're addressing it here. Who are we looking to protect here? We've already heard from one witness who acknowledged being an unregistered lobbyist. That's what we're looking to protect. We're not looking at people who have engaged in friendly disagreements with the government. We're looking at people who have engaged in potential violations of the Lobbying Act. And that's what Mrs. Thomas's amendment is looking to protect. This entire study is based on shady practices by Google and Facebook around the world, and we're going to say, well, let's not look beyond the four walls of Google headquarters where they've entered into communications potentially, maybe they haven't, with other individuals. That's the nature of it. That's what we're looking for.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas, your hand is up.
So I would just clarify then, Mr. Housefather is correct that what I would be looking to do here is simply to make sure that individuals are not scoped into this legislation, that the charter rights of individual Canadians are respected, which means that it is not up to government to survey or surveil what they have said. In terms of, Meta and Google looking at their internal emails and anything of that nature, if that's what Mr. Biddle and Mr. Housefather and other members wish to do, I suppose that's their prerogative. But at the end of the day, I would plead with the committee, please do not put individual Canadians in a place where their communications, which were believed to be private, will now be subject to government surveillance.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. I think that unless there is a new argument coming up, I would like to ask to call the vote, if there's anybody opposed, to call the vote with regard to the amendments. As stated,
one thing,
the amendment to Mr. Housefather's motion.
Madam Chair, just one thing. If I
yes,
may,
Mr.
Madam Chair.
Housefather.
So I found finally the motion with Google. And it does speak to any and all internal or external communications, including but not limited to emails, texts, or other forms of messages. And we did adopt that as a committee unanimously. Now, again, I understand what Ms. Thomas is saying, and in order to get a unanimity, I guess, but it's not what, I don't think that's what this means. What this means, we removed all the third-party stuff that was requested. This would be all internal and external communications, would mean communications related to actions it plan to take or consider taking on Canadian regulations. It's a back and forth with perhaps their publicist, and others. So is she basically only saying that she wants to exempt individuals, or she wants to exempt any communication with anybody? So maybe what we want to say then is all internal, external communications, save and except direct communications with individual Canadians back and forth. And if that's what she wants to say, but we keep corporations and their external communications with corporations, maybe that's a way to do it.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
At least we're getting
Mr. Housefather, I do still see that there's a bit of danger in that. But if that is the amendment that the committee would receive, then I will accept that.
Thank you. So now we have the amendment is still on the floor, albeit a little changed. And so if there's anyone against the amendment, I'd like to put your hand up now. Is there anybody on the floor, Mr. Clerk, who is speaking against the amendment that Ms. Thomas has put on the floor? No? No one. Therefore, I think Ms. Thomas's amendment, as clarified, is passed. Now, I'd like us to vote on the amended motion, please. And so anybody wishing opposed to the amended motion, if there's no one opposed,
Mr. Lemire.
Like Mr. Lemire.
So we were mentioning intimidation tactics. Let's keep in mind that the world is watching us. We've watched the precedents in Australia, and I really applaud us for finding agreement on this, on how to go forward, reaching agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Lemire. And so based on no hand going up, as far as I can see, to speak against the amended motion, then I will...
Madam Chair, we've had a request for a recorded division.
Yes, well, will we call the vote, please? Ms. Thomas, did you have something new to add?
No, thank you. I was going to make that request. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well then let's have a recorded division, please. Call the vote, clerk.
Mr. Housefather.
In favor.
Mr. Biddle.
In favor.
Mr. Coteau.
In favor.
Ms. Hefner.
In favor.
Mr. Lewis.
In favor.
Mr. Waugh.
Abstain.
Ms. Gladue.
Abstain.
Mr. Shields. Mrs. Thomas.
Abstain.
Monsieur Lemire.
En faveur.
Mr. Julian.
En faveur, oui.
You have 7 yeas.
Thank you very much. The amended motion has passed, and I think that I would like to now thank everybody for working so well together, and I'd like to move that this meeting be adjourned. Or
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Merci aux interprètes.
Thanks to the interpreters.
Thank you.